Hey everybody, I'm Jacob Suggs, and welcome back to another long overdue episode of the Real Deal Podcast. And unfortunately, my co-host Jacob Hill, who is normally on the podcast, cannot be here today, but instead, I've got a featured guest who is HoustonProductions1. He's got a really awesome YouTube channel. Houston, say hello to the people.
What's up? Hello to the people. Yes. I've just realized from hearing you talk about that your other co-host was named Jacob as well, which
Yeah.
I find to be amazing. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's had some problems in the past. Like when we've had guest stars, somebody would say like, "Hey, Jacob," and we'd both say yes in return. So it was just like really awkward. But
I feel that should just be a requirement for every podcast. The co-host should have the same names, just to make things extra confusing.
I think so too. All right. Well, today we're going to be talking about the phrase "for the fans" that has been used countless times in comic book and superhero media. And I think it's safe to say, starting out this podcast, that superhero movies are kind of popular. I'm not like a psychic or anything,
They're a little
but
bit popular. They make a lot of money in a way. In all
yeah.
ways, in fact.
Well, sometimes, but for the most part, yeah, typically they do. I mean, by this point, Marvel can make a movie about Ant-Man and it make a ton of money. So I think that says something about the people behind the camera and stuff.
Right.
But unfortunately, and I think that before I get into what I was about to say, I think it's safe to say that the Netflix Marvel shows like Daredevil and Jessica Jones and Luke Cage is the other one I was trying to remember the name. I think it's safe to say that those are the ones that are kind of like very, very popular with more mature audiences. And I think that the Netflix shows, honestly, I would say, are even better than, some of the films that they put out, which is baffling for me to say. But when it comes down, if I had to pick between like Iron Man 2 or Jessica Jones, I think it's safe to say that Jessica Jones is probably the better choice.
Well, and that's such a trend with lots of TV now, even just in general. Like the Stranger Things, is a better. If you release that as a movie, it would be a better movie than like most of the things that come out today, and TV is getting such to the point where, they have higher budgets and more time to plan things out with these Netflix shows. They're getting just so well done that, and I think a lot more people watch TV than movies in some cases now as well. So it's just, it's an interesting kind of dynamic going on,
Absolutely. And I kind of can dig how they're actually setting up kind of their own, like, even though it's in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, they're setting up the Defenders, which are kind of like the more, I don't want to say it, but I'm going to have to say it, dark and gritty Avengers. So the Justice League.
Yeah.
But they're setting up the Defenders on Netflix, which is pretty sweet. And I've been looking forward to that for forever. And, as far as these Netflix shows go, I think that they've had a hit with almost basically everyone. I know that Luke Cage is the one that people are iffy on, but I personally still haven't seen Luke Cage. I've seen Jessica Jones and Daredevil, but Luke Cage is the one I haven't really caught up on.
I watched all of Daredevil season 1, all of Jessica Jones. I adored both. I watched some of Daredevil season 2. I haven't finished that yet. And then I also watched like half of Luke Cage season 1. And to its credit, like pretty much all of these shows, honestly, are very competent, more than competent in terms of like filmmaking, Luke Cage is really well shot and well acted and the music's great and everything about it is really well made. But I just thought it was it wasn't very compelling in any way. And, the plot was kind of convoluted and meandering and stuff. And now we're hearing that Iron Fist could be the same way, that it's very bland and convoluted and kind of just goes along without any real point to it, which I'm kind of disappointed about,
Same here. I mean, he is the last Defender, and you kind of need all of these characters to work. Well, most of the characters to work, and I think they've got that part handled fairly well. But unfortunately, this last Defender's latest outing on Netflix has not been getting the shining criticism that Marvel's used to.
Yeah.
Last time I checked, and I checked earlier today, it's at a 14% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is
I mean, that's on par with The Shack.
I know. Starring Shaquille O'Neal.
Yeah.
I wish it would have been a so much better movie if it had if it had Shaquille O'Neal.
I think almost any movie would be better if it had Shaquille O'Neal.
Oh, I mean, he's everyone's favorite actor, so
hence why Space Jam is the greatest film of all time. Yeah?
Wait, what?
Wait,
Shaquille O'Neal's not in Space Jam.
Oh, right. No, it's It's Michael Jordan,
Houston,
right?
you just caused so many people to dislike this podcast.
Dude, I'm sorry. I've just ruined everything.
You know what though? I'll join in with you because I personally don't like Space Jam whatsoever. I don't think it's a good movie. I know. I don't like it. I don't think it's good. I didn't grow up with it though. So I saw it whenever I was like 10 and I was like, man, this is stupid.
Right. No, I don't think any person thinks it's an amazing movie. I just think everyone grew up with it to the point where they're like, this is the best movie ever.
But
so, yeah.
But yeah, going back to Iron Fist though, it was stated that, you know, I know Marvel's not used to this like criticism whatsoever, so I feel like they're kind of iffy on how to respond to it.
Right.
That's DC's job, but
like, what do we do with this? This is insane.
But I mean, like, you look at the other shows, you've got Daredevil, which is fantastic, and you've got Jessica Jones, which is fantastic. And I mean, overall, I guess it's like 3 out of 4 Marvel shows isn't that bad. I mean, that's actually pretty great.
Yeah.
But, you know, Finn Jones, this is the topic of this podcast. This is the stuff
Finally
that
getting to the topic
me.
here. Let's get to the topic.
It's only been like 7 minutes, you know, we're all good. But Finn Jones, who plays what's his name? Danny Rand, or the Iron Fist in Iron Fist. He stated the other day during like, I guess like a press conference or something for Iron Fist that they aren't making the show for critics. They're making the show for the fans.
Oh, but of course they are.
Of course. I mean, like, that phrase has been used so much lately, and it frustrates me so much every time that I hear for the fans. I just, it gets to me.
Yeah, man. I mean, see, here's the thing. I guess we're getting into this now. So,
yeah.
I do think there's merit to saying that something is made for a certain audience and it wasn't made for blank, you know. Because there does come a point when certain movies are they can't just cater to the lowest denominator anymore. So like, for instance, the Harry Potter movies. No one is going to understand Deathly Hallows unless they have seen the other films, right? And so in that sense, you could say it was made for the fans, right? Because it was made for the people who follow that series and who like it and stuff, right?
Absolutely. But I would say that case makes sense.
I think what Finn Jones is saying here, and what David Ayer, the director of infamous masterpiece Suicide Squad.
I think you mean Oscar-winning Suicide Squad.
Yes, Oscar-winning Suicide Squad.
Oscar-winning, Academy Award-winning masterpiece Suicide Squad.
I think what both of them are saying isn't quite that. I think what... Obviously, it's just kind of a lazy defense.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a cop-out, but that's just me. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think how to articulate it, because I, again, think there is some merit to making something for the fans, but I think that what they're saying is basically, well, if you have any criticism for this, then you're just not the target demographic, which obviously isn't true, and obviously can be proven wrong, because, I mean, I'm a fan of Marvel and superheroes, and not really Iron Fist. Who's a fan of Iron Fist when it comes down to it?
I know who he is, but I'm not really that big of a fan.
But I'm a fan of Marvel. And if I don't like it, does that mean that I'm not a fan that was made for me? What? Like, you know.
Yeah.
And I also think that maybe really you can't factor the movie critics out of every equation, right? Like,
I mean, ultimately,
they go, well, this
criticism.
wasn't made for the critics. Well, you know what? Everything is made for the critics because they are supposed to be the ones criticizing, right? And looking at things objectively. And I just, I'm trying to think of how better to phrase this, but
I think it's more like, I hear you. I think it's more like there's a big difference between a feature film and a fan film. And I feel like when you're making a film for the fans, that's when you get a fan film, like the stuff that you see on YouTube or on Vimeo or online anywhere where you have like the Spider-Man short films or the Batman short films, because you know what the fans want and you're making it for the fans who like those characters. But there's a big difference between a feature film. I feel like people should, I mean, hang on, how am I going to say this? I think it's more like you should be able to see a movie, but that doesn't mean that you have to read like the 500 issues of comic books that it's based on. Like, don't start at issue like 60 when your audience hasn't read 1 through 59.
Right, yeah.
I mean, I just feel like that's kind of like what the problem is now, is they're jumping so far ahead and they're doing all of this stuff, yet you're not reaching the audience that you really want because they don't know the comics. Like, it's kind of like books to movies. The movie should never rely on the fans of the book. A movie needs to stand on its own.
Yeah.
I feel like films and novels and stuff like that are very different forms of media. I mean, well, they are very different forms of media, but I feel like the problem is, like, you know, you hear people say like the book was better and stuff like that.
Right.
And it's just like, I feel like it's the same thing with like fan films and, you know, making movies for quote unquote fans. It just doesn't add up to me. I just think it's like, honestly, just a big cop out to dodge criticism. And I see so many movies, not just superhero movies, but primarily superhero movies, saying this, and it just really gets on my nerves because I'm just kind of like, it's the audience that you're reaching for. It's just, they shouldn't have to dive into all that extra material to understand your film.
Right. Yeah. Well,
You
and
know?
see, again, it's a balance too, because like, and really in life, everything is a balance. I'm telling you,
Right.
like there's
Yeah.
always an extreme of both sides.
get
But
it.
I think that, like, you know, on the one hand, it's cool to cater to the people who really like your stuff and to
Right.
give them. I address this in one of my new video essays about it's about films being aware of the fact that they're being watched by someone. Um, and it's fine to cater to people and please them and stuff, but and on the other hand, like, you don't want to you know, I think the flip side of what you're saying is that you're saying, well, I think everyone should be able to watch this and stuff, right? And
Yeah.
that's true, although I do think that movies shouldn't just cater to the lowest common
Right, and
denominator, you know?
I'll agree with you there, absolutely, and that's why I like Marvel. I mean, Marvel has a fair balance between that. Like,
Right,
Marvel makes
yes.
movies that people can enjoy, yet if you're a massive fan of the comic books, you might be able to catch the little things that normal
Yeah,
people might not catch on, and
yeah,
that's how you do it. I mean, that's how you introduce characters, and that's how you drop hints of stuff to come, not a 30-minute dream sequence
right.
and an email file introducing your characters for future movies. Look, okay, guys, you guys know me. I loved BVS. I'm not ashamed to say it. I like the Ultimate Edition quite a bit, but I will admit it's not a masterpiece. It has problems, and that's a problem that I have with it.
Yeah,
But, you know, I just feel like that's how you need to do it for the fans. If you really want to make something special for the fans, make something special that everyone can enjoy, but fans can pick up on. And I feel like that's what we're forgetting these days.
yeah. I yeah, I mean, that's the thing is that movies really should be able to move everyone, you know?
Right.
But that if you're the perfect movie would be a movie that can be appreciated on many levels, you know, because um you've got movies that are very I'm trying to think of an example of this. Maybe the Lego movie. Maybe I'll use that.
Okay.
That's actually a really great example now that I think
Oh
about it.
yeah.
The Lego movie is a really fun kids movie. It's a nice little animated film, right? But if you're a Lego fan, man, there are tons of fun references to the Lego product and
Yeah.
different like techniques that they use in the animation and everything that really cater to you. But they
Right.
don't crowd the story and they don't ruin anything and they don't mess with the overall vision of the film. They're just extra, you know, fun bits in the background, right?
Right.
And that's the way to do it. You know,
Yeah.
that's the way that you do something to please both sides of the coin without ruining it for one side, you know.
Yeah.
Um
And like with
so
the
yeah.
Lego movie, now that you brought that up, growing up, I was a massive fan of Legos. My parents can tell you that, or anybody that knows me can tell you that, and I still kind of am. But even when I'm watching the Lego movie, it's really cool because you might see, like, you know, a brick film going on in the background. Like, I know there's a few at the beginning of the Lego movie made by people on YouTube and stuff that I grew up watching because those were the Lego movies before the Lego movie, and they still kind of are. And I thought it was cool how they, you know, gave tribute to the fans who had made these like little short Lego brick films and stop motions in the actual feature film. But if you didn't know these people, then I mean, you would have just thought it was part of the movie. So I
Yeah.
feel like, you know, when you look at it that way, they're dropping little hints to me is more important than dropping a massive bomb to the public expecting everybody to catch on. And
Yeah.
I feel like dropping the little hints, like in the Lego movie and, you know, movies like that, if you're really a fan, you're going to catch on. But if you're not a fan, you may want to dive into a little bit more to understand what the fans caught on to.
Right.
It's the sense of
Yeah.
intrigue because movies are visual storytelling and they reach us on emotional and passionate levels, and we just sit down and enjoy something on a screen. I mean, like, why else would we sit in a dark room, with something being projected onto a screen and just stare at the
Right.
wall for like, 2 hours?
Yeah.
I mean, because it's reaching us on emotions and stuff like that. And if you're just doing fan service, then you're not going to reach your audience.
Yeah.
And I feel like what you said earlier about balance just hit the nail on the head.
Yeah. And I think, there is a point to be made that um I'm trying to think of how to say this because there is a point to be made that oftentimes when movies do try to cater to everyone,
Right.
they move no one. Um and that would be a point to me maybe about the Transformers movies, right? Where the Transformers
Yes,
movies
absolutely.
are made to appeal to as many people as possible and be a wild, fun ride. Look at all the explosions, dude. And like have all these international Chinese locations to cater to the Chinese demographic, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Um, and in doing that, in trying to campaign in every area to please every single person on the planet, they just lose everything. Because nothing gets the proper amount of attention and nothing gets the proper amount of development. And it's just crowded by all of this stuff that has no real heart to it. And so I do think that there is something to be said. There is some virtue in making something for a niche group of
Yes.
people. Um, like for instance, I follow a channel called Say Goodnight Kevin, which is a great channel. Everyone should check it out.
Mhm.
And his target demographic is Christians who also happen to be kind of liberal-ish, and also which is a rarity in terms of Christians, and also
Mhm.
kind of uh spunky and funny and willing to make jokes about their own faith and stuff. So he's got a very niche kind of demographic that he aims for. And his stuff isn't really going to be appreciated by the wide mass of the world. He's never going to be PewDiePie, but
Right.
he's aiming to please those people and he does it perfectly, right?
Yeah.
Um but there is, I think when people are judging these things, they do need to um this is again kind of getting back to what I say on Blockbusted a lot. The idea of things needing to be judged based on what they're trying to be, right?
Right.
So, um, if we were to judge Iron Fist based on it being a show that was made for the fans, right? Like, let's judge Iron Fist based on, you know, is it a show that has heart and that has emotion and that's fun and has a drive to it, but it also it gets its target demographic. If we were to judge it based on that, I don't know. Maybe we would think it was great. Maybe we'd still think it was bad. But I think what Finn Jones is trying to do there is say that no one can criticize our stuff because it was made for the fans. When in
Mhm.
reality, you could make something for the fans and we could still criticize it as being made for the fans, if that makes sense, right? Like
Yeah.
we may not have to criticize it and be like, well this Iron Fist show, it doesn't live up to, Breaking Bad levels or whatever, right? If we were to try to compare it to all other shows objectively and hold them all together in the same spot, right?
Right.
But um if we were to even if we were to just examine it as being made for the fans and just examine it as what it's trying to be as Iron Fist, right?
Right.
We might still think it was flawed. And I think what Finn Jones is trying to do is make us not be able to say that, which really, defies that purpose. So that was a completely all over the place thought from me that it wasn't very articulate, but that's what I was thinking just now.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, that's a good point. For me, it's okay. I've been critiquing movies for quite some time now, and seeing movies, and been a fan of movies for quite some time now. And ever since I started critiquing movies online and quote unquote professionally, I always have a certain scale that I go by, and it is the substance and style scale.
Yeah.
Um, And what that means is that you have to balance out style and substance in a film, and if you do that, you typically get a good film. Now, there are exceptions to this rule, like Pacific Rim. You have a lot more
Yeah.
style and action going on than you
Right.
do substance, but the substance is still there, and it's enough to get by, and it still makes for a really fun ride. And there are also, movies that have way more substance than style, like The Prestige, but The Prestige still has that style and those magic tricks that keep you interested and invested into the story, but it's more a character study, and The Prestige is more about like the plot and the mystery about what's going on, like any other Christopher Nolan movie ever. But for me, you have to balance those things out pretty well. And what movies I feel like are failing to do these days, superhero wise, or just like comic book wise, or movies in general, I think y'all get the point by this time in the podcast.
Yes, we've
But
repeated it many times now. So
yeah, but I think that how do I say it? I just feel like if you focus so much on the substance and trying to get all of the stuff for the fans in there,
right.
then you're not going to have a balance between that. And I feel like if you fail to have a balance, then you're
Yeah.
probably not going to have a good end product.
Well, and I would actually call that the style. If you're talking which one they're focusing on in terms of what's fan service, I think fan service really is more style than it is substance. Especially when you look at movies like Rogue One, which have a lot of style, lots of style, but not a ton of substance. I liked Rogue One, but
I did too. I loved it.
And I liked it quite a bit. I enjoyed it, but I just think it again gets pulled down by that idea that it's for the fans. And you could look at that again. Rogue One, in terms of like a fun Star Wars movie, we're looking at a Star Wars movie that's made for the fans, and it's like gonna have some awesome fan stuff, and Darth Vader's awesome. Like if we're looking at Star Wars Rogue One being made for the fans, it's great. But if we're looking at it objectively as a movie, it doesn't hold up in terms of everything else, I don't think.
See, I would feel free to disagree, because I feel like Rogue One, I totally respect your opinion. I get where you're coming from. Yeah. Just saying. I'm not one of those fans that's like, you're wrong because you disagree with everybody. But I feel free to disagree. Like, I feel if you took away the Star Wars name from Rogue One, and if we had never seen these characters before, it would have been a great setup movie. And I feel like B, it has enough originality and characters that stand out as to where, it really just flows well as a film. And I feel like it has those style beats and those substance beats that really just flow well together. And I mean, that's and I feel like
again, and I liked it as well. And I also don't want to make this the entire topic of the podcast.
Yeah, same here.
But I would just say that I think I kind of disagree with that, because I think that if you took away the Star Wars name and all the other films that came before Rogue One, if you took away New Hope and you took away Empire and everything, it doesn't really set up the universe in any way. It mostly depends on things that New Hope and Empire set up, previously, instead of kind of creating the mythos itself. And I don't know, because if it was to try to do it, be standalone from Empire and New Hope and make it so that you could take those away and it would still be a movie, I guess it would kind of have to re-explain everything. Like it would have to be like, this is what the Force is and this is what Darth Vader is, right? And then people will be like, oh, well, this sucks because we already know all this stuff. This is too much exposition. But at the same time, I do feel like it's very reliant on all the other films that came before it to be good. I don't know. That's, yeah.
It's all like subjective, I suppose. So, I mean, like really, it's just, it just comes down to the person watching the film. But I can totally see where you're coming from with that, because I would say the first hour of Rogue One is just kind of like, it's good, but it's not great, I don't know. But let's step away from that, because we talked about that for like 3 minutes now. But that being said, though, now going back to the for the fans argument, we're going to talk about some movies that have used for the fans other than Iron Fist, and it's Houston's favorite movies.
My favorite movies.
The DCEU movies, the cinematic masterpieces.
I'm a big fan.
They are. Yeah, especially of Suicide Squad, which is the best one, no doubt.
It's Oscar nominated, which means it's good.
It's also Academy Award winning.
Yes, of
So,
course.
I mean, let's be honest, that
Sorry, I
makeup way
always
better
yeah.
than Star Trek Beyond. Yeah, way better. I'm not upset. But yeah, we're gonna talk about those for just a little bit because I feel like those DCEU films have used For the Fans more than anything. So it shocked me whenever I heard Finn Jones say it about Iron Fist because I was like, hey, that's kind of what the DC people say. And although I like those movies, I know I'm in the
Right.
minority, but although I like those movies, that's not cool to say. um, so I'm going to talk about that a little bit, especially with Suicide Squad. I think Suicide Squad is more, prevalent with that, more so than Batman versus Superman or Batman v
Right. Yeah,
Superman.
I don't recall too many people using that as an argument.
And when Ben Affleck says For the Fans, I can kind of understand where Ben Affleck's coming from, but when Zack Snyder says For the Fans, that's where I'm more like, okay, he's just trying to dodge criticism of his movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I just think
That also reminds me of that time when Ben Affleck said, in at Comic-Con, he said, "This this movie has more complex has so many adult and complex themes in it that I don't really understand it, and I don't know if everyone will or whatever." And I was like,
yeah.
"You cheat! You're just saying now that if we don't like it, we're dumb." Wow.
Yeah.
Right, but
But I think it's more with Suicide Squad. The BVS, there have been some really hardcore defenders that have said it's for the fans, and if you don't understand it, then you're an idiot. Future X and DC Comic Zone. But
man,
man, I just got something in my throat.
that guy is a profound, prophetic, like intellectual. I'm telling you.
I don't understand him. I mean, I
Dude,
don't
he's a
get it.
madman.
He
Have you
is.
ever talked about on the podcast the fact that you messaged him that one time?
No, I haven't.
Man.
Man, I need to leak those messages. I'll probably like show them while the podcast is playing now that you brought it up, or I'll just do it in another video or make it. I'll leak them one way or another. So guys, you will see my messages to future XMDC Comic Zone. But I know that you messaged him too and said like, "I'm sorry that you're so angry all the time."
Yeah.
or something
Yeah.
like that, and he just responded with like all the words that you're not supposed to say.
Right.
Uh,
Man.
that man is my favorite human being on the face of the earth.
I'm telling you. He's
But
brilliant.
But as for Suicide Squad, David Ayer said it was for the fans and he wanted to make something for the fans. And I heard David Ayer say it a lot more than Zack Snyder, so I'm going to point the blame where it's Suicide Squad. But even then, when they said it, there's cool stuff in Suicide Squad that if you're a fan of the comics, you pick up on. I mean,
Yeah.
I grew up DC, so when people say, like, you're a fanboy, no, it's just because I grew up more DC than I did Marvel. But I still love Marvel though. Don't get me wrong, people. Please don't get triggered in the comments. But I think it's more like there's cool stuff in Suicide Squad if you've read the comics, like the Joker Harley Quinn and like the tuxedo and stuff for that quick little scene. That's awesome. There's also stuff with like Croc and other stuff that's in the movie that I really appreciated, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be a great movie. You know what I mean? And I feel like when David Ayer said it's for the fans, it's for the fans.
Right.
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, the people that have read the comics are going to pick up on the little things, but in the big picture, your movie's just not that great.
Right.
I mean, really, that's where I'm coming from here.
Yeah.
So I think it's more Suicide Squad than anything else that's used this excuse, before. But either way, it just frustrates me even more, especially with a movie like that. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm trying to think. I don't think I've really got that much else to say about it in terms of, I think I've kind of said everything I have on that, but I just,
same here.
It's a lazy defense. It really kind of ignores critics. And that is a thing. Like, I'm freaking sick and tired of these people who just treat critics like trash and treat Rotten Tomatoes like trash and treat everything like trash. In terms of film criticism, they go, they're elitist and they don't understand the mainstream audiences, what we like and stuff. And I'm like, no, they're just people with opinions just like you, and they know more about film than you do, probably. And so I think their opinion at least should be, considered pretty highly and analyzed. Because I was having this debate on Twitter earlier today. I have so many debates on Twitter, so many.
Yeah, same here. Don't worry.
But people always say, every opinion matters, every opinion is valid. There are no right or wrong opinions. And on the one hand, you are correct, but on the other hand, I do think that film critics kind of should be elevated in terms of their opinion over your neighbor across the street or your grandma, right? Because
Yeah.
they're well versed in the film world. They understand movies. They've probably taken a film history class in college or something. They know the history of film. They know how films are made and work. And so, yeah, I just think it's kind of rude and disrespectful almost to say that their opinion is the same as
Right. Right.
someone across the street or whatever, or someone you bump into in the coffee shop or whatever. Like, that's just dumb, you know?
Yeah, I mean, they've studied this and have way more prestige. It just makes
It's
more sense. Like,
it
I would
doesn't mean
trust
that
a
you have to agree with them. It doesn't mean that they're right, but it means
right.
that um something.
Yeah, I mean, like, I would take
Yeah,
Roger Ebert's opinion over, like, some kid that I see on the streets
right.
opinion on a movie. You know what I mean? Like, I just know that he's more well versed in the area.
Right.
And so, I mean, like, I would just take somebody like that over. I mean, really, that's it. But I think the most important thing to come from all of this is what you said on Twitter earlier today or yesterday or sometime. And it was the most important thing about Iron Fist's Rotten Tomatoes score is that it just shows that Marvel did not pay off critics to hate on the
Right.
DC
Yeah.
movies and give those negative reviews because
So
now they're
DC
getting
fans can
trashed.
either go, "Well, ha, Marvel finally got a bad score," or they can go, well, see, if they say that, then that means that they think Rotten Tomatoes matters, which
It
they've already said
doesn't.
that it doesn't matter because it gave us a bad review, so it's biased or something. And also it disproves their theory that Marvel pays off critics. So
See, and yeah, and
it's
see,
pretty
the thing
much
with Rotten Tomatoes,
lose
go ahead.
lose.
My bad.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, you go.
okay. So the thing with Rotten Tomatoes is real fast. I might as well just say this. I see Rotten Tomatoes as insight. Okay, Rotten Tomatoes scores have never affected my overall score that I've given a film in a review. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So like Batman versus it affects my expectations. So when I saw that Batman versus Superman got critically trashed, I was like, oh no, that's oh no, my expectations were just like way shot down.
Yeah.
But I saw the movie, and I mean, I was honest with my fans because I want to be honest with the people watching my videos and reviews. I liked that movie. I did. And so I gave it a positive review in, my review. So I was like, ultimately, the Rotten Tomato score does not affect how I see movies. It more
Right.
affects the excitement level and hype level and overall insight.
Well, and
Um,
people seem to forget that Rotten Tomatoes isn't a person, and it's not even
right.
like they don't decide this stuff. They just take all the film critics that you like and don't like, and they combine all their opinions into one score, right? Now,
Right.
the problem with this, obviously, is that it lacks nuance. It's just a number, and people go, "Oh, that means it's good," or "Oh, that means it's bad," without
Yeah.
reading what every individual critic had to say about it, right? So, and that's the problem with all film criticism is that everything's the best movie ever or the worst movie ever. There's
Yes.
nothing in between. Um, but also, I think people forget on Rotten Tomatoes, just from a like technical perspective, that the percentage that you see on the Rotten Tomatoes page is how many people would say that they liked it, which means they gave it a
Right.
6 of 10 or above. So you could have 100 people, 200 people give a movie a 6 of 10. All of them just give it a 6 of 10, and the movie would have
Mhm.
100% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Right.
But the number that people should really be looking at is the number below the percentage, which is the average rating, which I think is what people think that the percentage is. They think that's the average percentage rating, which it's
Yeah.
not.
No.
Um,
Yeah.
but so if you use Rotten Tomatoes properly, and if you know how it works, it's a great site. And I think that, lots of people don't even realize that there's an average rating below that actually indicates what people really gave it. So like Kong Skull Island, it's got like a what 79, 78 or something on Rotten Tomatoes right now, and
Yeah.
the average rating is, and I'm probably wrong here, but I don't know. I think it's like a 6 point something out of 10. Um, and so yeah, it's very different from what people perceive the website to be. If they would just understand it more, maybe it would be used better and
Absolutely.
more properly. So yeah,
Yeah. I totally agree with that. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. But I mean, then you have the fans that are like, it's biased and stuff like that. Which, look, you're gonna find bias anywhere.
right.
You're gonna find bias. Like, I mean, if I grew up DC, so I'm probably gonna be more lenient towards DC movies. I mean, that's just how it is. I mean, I can say they have problems, but
Yeah.
ultimately I'm probably going to be more hyped for a DC movie than a Marvel movie because I grew up with that.
Right.
So
And there's
either
nothing
way,
wrong with being biased either. You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
like
absolutely.
it's called being a person and it's called having an opinion that's personal to you. You know,
Yeah,
I liked Skull Island a lot, but that's just because I like jungle movies a lot, and I like these
same
big, like,
here.
awesome monster destruction movies. You know, um, and so I think that when you're making a when you're trying to be a film critic, you have to kind of decide what
Mhm.
you're gonna be, because you can be Chris Stuckman, who is always like, I like this movie because it's my childhood. I grew up with this as a kid.
Yeah.
That's what Chris Stuckman says in every single review. Um, or you can be a film critic like, I'm trying to think of an example. I don't know, maybe Ralph the Movie Maker, for instance. Maybe, I don't
Yeah.
know. Um, who tries to put all their personal biases aside and just judge the movie as objectively as they personally can. Obviously, they still have bias, but they try to put all of that aside and not factor in how much they like the film, but factor in how much they think the film is good, you know.
Right.
And I'd say I lean more towards that side personally in my judgment of films, but I obviously still have lots of bias and I obviously kind of stray to the other side every now and then. Um so
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, and the same goes for like unjustified reviews. Like you're always going to find some reviews that don't quite add up.
Right.
But I mean, just in a way, those almost don't count in my opinion. But just like the whole thing about like the whole controversy about Danny Rand being a white guy in Iron Fist. He's always been white, but for some reason people made a big controversy out of that, and I don't really want to necessarily get into all of that.
Yeah.
But you're always going to find reviews that are biased and some may not add up. And I'm just saying that because I have seen reviews like that before. Like, it's not good because it's gloomy. Like, that, what? That doesn't
Yeah.
affect the storytelling or anything like that. But,
Right.
overall, I think that, and this is my kind of ultimate thoughts on the phrase for the fans, you shouldn't have to know or read the comics necessarily to enjoy a film that's based on them.
Yeah.
Like adapting a book and stuff like that, like I said before and earlier on.
Exactly.
Ultimately, you just don't need to be a fan of the comics to be a fan of the movie, or you don't need to be a fan of the book to be a fan of the movie.
Yeah.
And ultimately, that's just my final thoughts on that. I feel like I've said everything that I can say
Yeah,
about
same.
the phrase for the fans. It's just a massive cop out, and there's nothing else that I can say about it that can change my mind or say anything else. I just think that it's a massive cop out, and saying it's just cutting your movie or show short because you're just restricting yourself to a certain audience that may or may not have seen the comics or anything like that, and B, it's restricting your show from another audience that hasn't read the comics and doesn't know the character but wants to maybe know the character.
Right.
But they can't know the character
That's
because
true.
it's for the fans.
Right.
And that's why it aggravates me so much.
Yeah, that's true. That is, if people keep making things that are for the fans, then the fans will die out and there won't be any more fans to make them for, right? Because
Right.
if you keep making things for the fans, then no new fans get made. They don't get formed because they feel that the people who already know it are part of this elitist group that get to watch this show and get to like it and stuff, right?
Right.
And so eventually you would just lose your entire audience in theory. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I can 100% agree with that. And I feel like I've said everything that I can say about
Yeah.
this matter.
So yeah,
But,
let's wrap it up.
Yeah, let's let's end this podcast. Well, Houston, thanks so much for being on the show. Where can
But
these
of
people
course,
find you?
they can
And
find me at Blockbusted Pod on Twitter. There's lots of brilliant thoughts on there and lots of immature ones too. So there's a balance, if you will. You can also find me on HoustonProductions1, which is my YouTube channel that just passed 11,000 subscribers yesterday. So
that's awesome.
yeah,
Congratulations.
hype.
And you guys can find me here on Frame by Frame. I'm pretty sure you're on the YouTube channel, but I'm also on VidMe. VidMe is kind of like a website that's
It's
kind
a
of like
nice little website. It's good.
yeah, it's really great. It's kind of like the golden days of YouTube.
Yeah.
And I just find it a really great site that creators can share their stuff. So you can find me on VidMe, Frame by Frame. Twitter is at JTimSuggs for my personal account, and FBF Film Co. for the Frame by Frame account, which you can see updates and stuff on there. And yeah, that's basically all I have to say for this podcast. Thank you again, Houston, for being on the show.
Yes.
You were the second guest star, so that's
Oh,
pretty
good.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, thank you guys so much for listening. And if you're interested and want to see more, please click like, and I will see you guys in the next video and the next podcast sometime soon. Thank you guys.
Bye, guys.